here slightly. We're going to talk about the Sabbath. All right, so Pastor Gaiman asked me to speak about the Sabbath this morning. Now, we're not a congregation that is new to the idea of Sabbath. I'm not going to try to explain to you why the day we call the seventh day is the correct Bible Sabbath. If you need some information on that, I'd be glad to provide that for you, but that would take a little while, and I believe that this congregation, for the most part, is comfortable and is knowledgeable in the area that this really indeed is the Sabbath day of Scripture. And that the day that we call the Saturday is the day we ought to try to keep the Sabbath day holy. But what I am going to try to do is to try to wade through a lot of potential areas of concern and boil it down to something that I think is simple, but hopefully will be useful to us, being this is a somewhat familiar topic. Now, there's two aspects of the Sabbath we're going to look at. We're going to look at two passages from the Old Testament, and we're going to look at one passage from the New Testament, God willing, because we have time. Now, a casual reading might lead one to say that the passages in the Old Testament and the New Testament are contradictory. I hope to show that that's not really the case. Now let's look at the Old Testament passages. The Old Testament passages are going to deal with what we might call the rules side of the situation. And then the New Testament passage is going to deal with what we might call the heart side of the situation. So we've got Sabbath rules, and we got the Sabbath heart issue. Okay? The Old Testament has got many things in it about Sabbath rules. The New Testament really doesn't have a lot of Sabbath rules, but there's Sabbath heart issues. Now you're familiar with much of the church world in general is going to say, well, rules got all, we're just done with them. That's how we relieve the apparent tension. That's not correct. There is the apparent tension is just that, only apparent. So let's look at the two sides of the coin here. Let's start with the rules. Now, as you know, I'm a teacher. I have rules. If I don't have rules in my class, the class wouldn't amount to a thing. It would be anarchy. Now, if you've got a house, you better have rules, or you're going to have a mess. If you've got anything, you're going to have rules. Like I mentioned a while back, we can just have a chess club. We're going to have a few rules. Well, pretty soon we won't have a chess club. So you've got to have rules. So before we get all excited and say, well, I don't really like rules, or they really, I hate the way they bind me. And just understand, if you're a leader of anything, you might be the leader of a Cub Scout troop. You might not be a leader. You're going to have a few rules.
Amen.
The boys are going to trample you.
Amen.
So, let's look at the rules. Let's not get too aggravated about the fact that they're rules. Here we go. All right. I'm going to try to make it short and sweet. Ready for some short, sweet rules about the Sabbath day. Number one, the first rule, rest. Exodus chapter 20. Commandment, that is the abbreviated commandment. If you read all four, 4 verses out of Exodus 20, verse 8, 9, 10, 11, it's more than just remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. It describes what else is supposed to happen. It's one of the key things. The first rule is it really emphasizes you're supposed to rest. Rest. Everybody say rest.
Rest.
Okay. Rule 1, rest. Read Exodus 20 in your own time. Rule 2, Leviticus 23:3. I won't read it. You've heard it before. Rule 2, it says we're supposed to have a holy convocation. Right? Holy convocation. Not complicated for us in our time. Holy convocation, for the sake of a third grader, let's just say it plain and simple. And we could, work into the words in detail. But it's a pretty simple idea. So for the sake of our, just keep it really simple. A holy convocation means go to church. All right? Well, let's say go to church.
Go to church.
Yeah, I'm so sure about that. Well, I'm trying to tell you. All right, you can think I'm wrong rule. I guess we can chat about that later. I'm pretty sure I'm right. Okay, so we've got 2 rules here. So far we've got rest.
Rest.
Go to church.
Go to church.
2 more now. Forgive me if I'm glossing over and oversimplifying. Okay. Rule 3. We got 2 positives. Rest. Go to church. Rule 3 is, all right, are you ready? Rule 3. This is simple. Don't work. Don't work. Now you see, well, where does it say that? Well, let's go back to Exodus. Now that's kind of obvious, right? If you're resting, that means you're not what?
Working.
Working. And if you're going to church, you're not
Working.
working. Okay, so they kind of work together. So we've got rest. You say, well, wait a minute. This rule of going to church, I don't find that restful. Please. I know it takes a little activity to get ready, right? You got to comb your hair and put that tie on, right, Caleb? I know it's tricky and all. But it ought to be restful. Surely when you get here, I hope you're not going to leave here weary. Maybe if you leave here and you don't feel a little bit rested, maybe there's something going on in your heart that's making you, maybe over here on the heart side, we need some adjustments. All right, so we got, I'm drifting. So we've got, what was the first one?
Rest. Go to church.
Go to church.
Don't work.
All right, so if we're not working, we're going to be able to do the first 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works together. This is not complicated. Next one. The next one. I'm going to have to read a passage on this because this one sometimes gets lost. But it fits in with the first 3 rules. And again, I'm trying to keep it short and simple with simple rules. Nehemiah chapter number 13. Nehemiah 13. When we get to this, you're going to see where it kind of works into the other 3. Okay? Nehemiah 13. Now, back in the days of Nehemiah, they were indeed doing trying to keep the Sabbath, but there was one important component that messed up the first 3 parts here. Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 15. You ready? Nehemiah is getting ready to scold some people. He's getting ready to give them a good cheering out. He says, in those days, I saw in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath and bringing in sheaves and laying asses, as also wine, grapes, figs, all manner of burdens they brought in Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. They're doing some work, weren't they? It goes on. It says, I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. There dwelt men of Tyre therein who brought fish and manner of wherein sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah and said to them, what evil thing is this that ye do and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus, and bring evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set I at the gates, that there should be no burden be brought in the Sabbath day. So the merchants and sellers they couldn't buy and sell on the Sabbath day. All right, so this takes us to rule number 4. And forgive me again, I know I'm kind of glossing over things. All right, so we got 1.
Rest.
That's number 2.
Go to church.
Number 3.
Don't work.
Number 4 is no buying, selling business. Take your wallet and put it away. Take your credit card and put it away. Take Amazon. That's a little harder. That only takes maybe 45 seconds and doesn't really bother anybody, right? You don't have to go anywhere. I don't think they would even know, would they? But, it's probably a good idea to do what? No buying and selling. You say, well, man, you're getting really picky here. I find it restful to, go out and eat after church, or I find it restful to go to a ball game. That's really restful to me. Well, there's other ways to rest. All right. So, and I'm not trying to really beat anybody up. I'm just trying to tell you this is what the Bible teaches. All right. So we've got our 4th rule is we're not going to be buying, we're not going to be selling, we're We're not going to be merchandising. That's just something we're not going to do. No business activity on my part. All right, so these are our 4 rules. So this is the whole rule side. 4 simple rules. All right, we'll try to keep those in our mind. Now we're going to jump over to the New Testament, and I hope I've got enough time. But as we look at this New Testament passage, you're going to say, at a casual reading, you're going to say, well, this just totally blows out of the water, all that rule stuff, and we just need to, obviously, Jesus is teaching us we need to forget about the rules. No, wait. Stop. Before we read the passage, and before you come to that casual conclusion, does it really make sense that Jesus is going to say, forget about the rules in Matthew chapter 12? That's where we're going. Well, back here in just Matthew chapter 5, he told us in the Sermon on the Mount that not even a jot or a tittle of the law is going to be done away with.
Amen.
Right? So we've got that on record. And really think that that's what Jesus is saying? Let's live without rules?
No.
And he's saying, let's just live without any, just the Sabbath day, just do willy-nilly whatever you want. Hey, I want Sabbath day to be, Thursday at 3 in the morning. And you want yours is on another time. And I keep the Sabbath by, I go to the gym. And you keep the Sabbath by getting a suntan at your pool. Everybody's going to, is that really what Jesus is going to be teaching us?
No.
Come on. No. Yes. A lot of the church world really runs down that course. Now, they don't go so far down that course, they actually say, we don't want you to come to church. They want you to come to church. Fine. But that's about it. And that really about they might keep that little piece of the rule. I'm not really sure how all of them do it exactly. I'm not really trying to pick on the church world in general necessarily. There's a few things that they do we don't do all that well we can learn from. Although there's a lot they don't.
3 p.m.
Let's go to Matthew. Let's go to Matthew chapter 12. So we've got we look at the rule side, and I tried to boil it down really simple and short, and forgive me if that was an inadequate summary of Sabbath, practical Sabbath living. Let's look at Matthew chapter 12, and let's read what Jesus says and does. Matthew 12, let's read what Jesus says and what he does, and see if we can learn from our Savior Jesus Christ. I hope we can. All right, I'm going to read 13 verses. You guys ready? We're going to read 13 verses, Matthew 12, 1 through 13. And I really want you to follow along. Please do. Now, we're going to stay here for a little bit. Matthew 12, 1 through 13. It's a story. It's a story about the Sabbath. A couple different things occur on this Sabbath day. As we go through it, kind of try to note the little things as well as the more obvious things. So here we go. Verse 1. At that time, Jesus went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and the disciples were hungered and began to pluck the ears of the corn to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. But he said to them, Have ye not read what David did when he was hungered and they were with him? How he entered into the house of God and did eat the showbread which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priests? Or have ye not read of the law, how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? But I say unto you, that in this place is one greater than the temple. But if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, ye would not condemn the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath day. When he was departed thence, he went into their synagogue. And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. And they asked him, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? That they might accuse him. And he said to them, What man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep? And if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold on it and lift it out? How much then is a man better than a sheep? Wherefore, it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath day. Then saith he to the man, Stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it forth, and it was restored whole, like as the other.
Amen.
Now that's a really great story, isn't it? I mean, this guy was healed. I suppose, though, as you read with me these 13 verses, you can kind of see how a person might assume, oh yeah, he's pretty much doing away with all those rules, isn't he? A casual reading makes it kind of sound that way. But a closer reading is going to reveal a different story. And a closer reading is going to understand what he was scolding the Pharisees for and what he was not scolding them for. Because he did give them basically a reprimand, didn't he? He's saying, look, you Pharisees, you got a problem about the Sabbath and your attitude. But let's make sure we get it right. Okay, let's note the first half of the story. The story actually has two parts. They have a part where Jesus' disciples are walking through a field, and the Pharisees see them, and there's some activity there. Then a little later on, they go somewhere, don't they? They go into the synagogue, and there's another event there, right? So we got two particular geographic locations, probably not very far away from each other. Got the outside, the field, and you got the inside, and the synagogue. Two halves of the story. Now, on that first half, it says that they were hungry and began to pluck the ears of corn. By the way, that corn means grain, it would be the wheat or barley, most likely. So they were strolling around. Now, it says there that the Pharisees got upset with them and began to accuse them. Said, look, you're doing something that is not lawful to do. And they're saying, you are working. You are working. You are harvesting. You are working, you're harvesting. And that really isn't accurate. They weren't harvesting, and they weren't working. I don't know if you've ever tried it. You can actually take wheat and go like this with it, and you can puff away the chaff and eat it. Now, you're not going to get a lot. Now, it says that his disciples were hungry, and they ate, and they did this. I guess you could call it a meal. But if you've ever done that, you know it probably wasn't much of a meal. It'd be more like what you and I probably call a snack. Not very big. Now, the Pharisees were missing the whole point. Because the point of the commandment is not to say, don't eat. Is that the point of the Sabbath commandment in total when it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, don't work, etc., etc.? Does it mean don't eat?
No.
No, it's not. It doesn't say don't eat. Oh, you're working. You're lifting that fork, which is heavily laden, all the way up, and you're going to get tired after a while. What a big job. A lot of work you're doing there. Well, obviously, that's not the point. And that's why Jesus was saying, come on, guys. You're missing the whole point here. All right? Now, by the way, this was what was called gleaning in the Old Testament. We don't have that now. If you wander through a farmer's field, he sees you making a snack with a dozen of your friends, he's probably going to chase you off. In those days, they had gleaning laws which allowed such a thing. Part of the charitable nature of Old Testament law. That's the way they handled charity, which is another story. Now, their criticism in verse 2 is not valid. It really wasn't breaking the law. But Jesus takes it as a point, and he says, wait a minute. Didn't David break the law? Now, I don't have time to go into 1 Samuel. If you go into 1 Samuel, you're going to discover the story of David. King David was being chased by King Saul. King Saul had tried to nail him to the wall with a big old spear, and David had to run away a little while later. And David was running for his life. And as he was running for his life, and he knew Saul's army, King Saul was mad at him, David ran to this little town called Nob. And in Nob there was a priest, and they had a little sanctuary, a little holy place. And there was some bread there. David said, man, I'm starved. He's trying to kill me. Do you have anything for me and my followers? Which I had a couple followers with him. And the priest said, we don't really have anything except this sacred bread. And, normally people don't eat the sacred bread. And David said, well, do you think I can have it? And the priest said, yeah, I see. Go ahead and take it. So he eats the sacred bread and goes on his way. Was God angry? No, he wasn't angry. Later on, we see how grave a situation was, because finally Saul caught up with these guys and said, hey, did a guy named David come through? Did you guys help him? Okay, off with their head. You got to eat him. I can kill them all. The guy who gave bread got lost his life because of it. Not because Saul was mad about holy bread being eaten, but because Saul had become an evil man, was trying to kill David. All right. What was Jesus driving at? He was making a point. There's a point he's making. And I'll get to that. But Jesus makes another point. he says, what about the priests in verse 5? He says the priests, now this seems like an oxymoron. He says in verse 5, the priests profane the Sabbath, yet are blameless. Well, if they're blameless, how do they profane it? If you profane the Sabbath, are you blameless? No. If you're blameless, did you profane the Sabbath? Well, you can't be both. Not really. So what did Jesus mean? He meant to say there's a technical violation of the rule. He says, yeah, there's a technical violation of the rule, yet that technical violation is what we might call an exception. There's an exception. You say, well, is there exceptions to Sabbath keeping? In the real world, are there exceptions to Sabbath keeping? Some of you are saying, I'm not sure I want to answer that. You're thinking, what's there if I say yes? What's the implication? I'm sure if I say no, what's the implication? Well, Jesus is teaching that there are exceptions to the Sabbath. If you take the rule, there are going to be exceptions to the Sabbath day. If I say to myself, I'm not going to take a long road trip and drive 3 hours on a long road trip because that's going to weary me and I'm not resting. Well, so I have to buy some gas on the way. Yet, if my wife is having a heart attack, well, let's turn around. Let's say I'm having a heart attack. I'm going to say, get us in the car and get us, even if it's a 3-hour drive, even if you buy some gas, please do it. Look, Jesus is saying, let's be real. The Pharisees weren't real. They weren't living in the real world. Jesus is saying, let's be real. Yes, there's exceptions. There's exceptions to many rules. I have exceptions in my classroom. I don't like to admit it. But once in a while, there really are exceptions to the rules in my classroom because there's a really unusual situation. So Jesus really is pointing out that there are exceptions that aren't really a violation of the Sabbath day. And then he goes on, and I see I'm running through this. We don't have time to go into it quite with the detail I'd like, but you get the point of what he's driving at. Now, when he gets over to the healing, we have basically the same thing. Now we've left outdoors, we've come indoors. And the priests are trying to trap him. They say, hey, we heard he can heal. They probably thought he maybe could. And they actually wanted him to do it so they could accuse him. So Jesus willingly stepped into their little trap. Not only to help this gentleman, but he was going to have to say, well, I can make a point too. I can teach these guys something maybe, if they have a teachable heart.
None.
So he said, all right, I'm going to heal him. And he did. And then, okay,